Hell's Angel saved a woman from danger. She later became the love of his life. Johnny rolled into the sleepy town of Pine Ridge as the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the main street. His Harley rumbled beneath him, the familiar vibration a comfort after the long, solitary hours on the open road. The town looked like dozens of others he'd passed through. A handful of shops with weather-beaten signs, a diner with locals visible through dusty windows, and the occasional curious glance from passers-by. He slowed his bike, scanning the surroundings with practiced vigilance. At 45, Johnny had learned to size up a place within moments of arrival. His weathered face remained impassive beneath his dark sunglasses, but his senses were alert. The faded tattoos peeking from beneath his leather jacket told stories he preferred to keep to himself these days. "Just passing through," he muttered to himself, a habit formed from years of riding alone. That's when he noticed her, a young woman with a camera, her dark hair caught in the breeze as she focused her lens on something across the street. There was an intensity to her concentration that made Johnny pause. She wasn't just taking tourist snapshots. She moved with purpose, occasionally ducking behind a parked car as if trying to remain unseen. Before you continue listening, please let me know where in the world are you watching from today. Now back to the story. Johnny followed her gaze and tensed immediately. In the shadow of an alley between a hardware store and a closed-down bakery, 3 men stood in a tight circle. Their stiff postures and furtive glances screamed trouble to Johnny's experienced eyes. One man opened a briefcase, revealing stacks of cash. Another nodded, passing over a package. "Cartel," Johnny whispered, recognizing the telltale signs of a drug exchange. His hands gripped the handlebars tighter. This wasn't his business. He'd promised himself years ago that he was done with that world. The photographer shifted position, moving closer to get a better angle. The sun caught her camera lens, sending a flash of reflected light directly toward the men in the alley. Johnny saw it happen before she did. One of the men looked up sharply, his hand moving to his waistband where Johnny was certain a weapon waited. "Damn it," Johnny growled, making a split-second decision. He revved his engine and steered his motorcycle toward the woman, who remained oblivious to the danger she was in. As he approached, the woman turned, startled by the roar of his Harley. For a moment their eyes met, hers wide with surprise, his narrowed with urgency. "Get on!" Johnny commanded, his voice rough from disuse. "What? Who are you?" she demanded, clutching her camera protectively. "Those men you're photographing? They've spotted you. And trust me, they don't like having their picture taken." Johnny glanced towards the alley, where 2 of the men were now moving in their direction, their faces hardened with anger. The woman turned, following his gaze, and Johnny saw the color drain from her face as understanding dawned. I didn't realize," she stammered. "No time. Get on now or stay here and explain to them why you've been documenting their business meeting." Johnny's tone left no room for argument. With a final glance toward the approaching men, she swung her leg over the bike behind him, barely settling before Johnny accelerated, the sudden movement forcing her to grab his waist to keep from falling. "My name's Mia," she shouted over the engine as they sped away from the center of town. "Johnny," he replied curtly, weaving through side streets to ensure they weren't followed. "What were you thinking? Taking pictures of a cartel deal?" "Cartel?" Mia's voice rose in alarm. "I was working on a photo essay about small-town America. I thought they were just, I don't know, businessmen meeting." Johnny shook his head, checking his mirrors. A black SUV had pulled out from near the alley and was now gaining on them. "Well, those businessmen are coming after us now." Mia tightened her grip around his waist as Johnny accelerated, the engine roaring as they raced toward the town limits. The SUV followed, closing the distance. Hold on tight, Johnny warned, veering suddenly onto a dirt path that cut through a wooded area. The motorcycle bounced over the uneven terrain, but Johnny handled it with the skill of someone who had spent a lifetime on two wheels. Behind them, the SUV skidded to a stop. Unable, "How long have you had this place?" she asked, her voice still unsteady from the adrenaline rush. Johnny moved to the windows, drawing the curtains closed. "About 5 years. Bought it from an old-timer who was moving to Florida." He turned to face her. "You can relax. We're safe here for now." Mia sank onto the couch, finally allowing her shoulders to drop. "Those men, you said they were cartel?" Johnny nodded, moving to the kitchen where he filled a kettle with water. "Eastern Pacific Cartel, from the looks of it. They've been pushing into small towns lately." He set the kettle on the stove. "You got any injuries I should know about?" She shook her head. "Just shaken up." Her hands trembled as she set her camera on the coffee table. "I can't believe this. I was just doing a photography assignment." Johnny's rugged face softened slightly. "Wrong place, wrong time. Happens to the best of us." "Why did you help me?" Mia looked up at him, really studying him for the first time. The graying beard, the lines around his eyes that spoke of hard years, the way he moved with a careful awareness of his surroundings. He shrugged, his leather jacket creaking with the movement. Couldn't just ride past. The kettle whistled, and Johnny prepared 2 mugs of tea, setting one in front of her. The simple kindness made her throat tighten unexpectedly. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Not just for the tea, for everything." Johnny nodded and sat in a chair across from her. "Those men saw your face clearly. They probably got a good look at your camera, too. You got any ID in that bag?" Mia's stomach dropped. "My wallet. It has my driver's license." "Then they'll know who you are soon enough." His voice was matter-of-fact, not unkind but direct. "You can't go home for a while." The reality of her situation crashed over her like a cold wave. "But my work, my apartment, my cat." She pressed her hands against her face. "This can't be happening." "Anyone who can check on your cat?" Johnny asked, surprising her with his concern for such a small detail. "My neighbor has a key." Mia took a deep breath. "I should call her." Johnny shook his head. "Not from your phone. They might be tracking it already. You can use mine later, but first we need to make sure you're not followed here." Mia nodded, trying to process everything. "I don't understand. Why would they care so much about some random photographer?" "Because they don't know what you saw or who you might tell," Johnny explained. "In their world, loose ends are dangerous." Mia sipped her tea, the warmth providing a small comfort. "I don't even know who you are," she admitted. "Why should I trust you?" Johnny's eyes met hers, steady and unflinching. "You shouldn't, not yet. But right now I'm the only one standing between you and some very dangerous people." The honesty of his answer was oddly reassuring. Mia nodded slowly. "Fair enough." While Johnny moved around the cabin, checking locks and pulling supplies from cabinets, Mia found herself thinking of her father. How he'd left when she was 12, disappearing without explanation. Her mother had never fully recovered from the abandonment, becoming distant and eventually passing away 2 years ago from cancer. "Is there anyone who'll be looking for you?" Johnny asked, interrupting her thoughts. "Family? Boyfriend?" Mia shook her head. "No boyfriend. My mother died a couple years ago. My father..." She paused. "He left when I was young. I haven't seen him since." Johnny nodded, not pushing for more details. He placed a shotgun on the kitchen table, checking its mechanism with practiced hands. You know how to use one of these? He asked. No, Mia admitted. I'll teach you tomorrow. Johnny moved to a cabinet near the door, pulling out extra shells and a handgun. For now, try to rest. We've got a long few days ahead. Mia watched him prepare, his movements efficient and purposeful. Despite her uncertainty about trusting this stranger, she felt oddly safe in his presence. As the reality of her situation settled in, she wondered what her father would think if he could see her now, hiding in a cabin with a mysterious biker, running from dangerous men. She'd spent years trying to build a stable life after her family had fallen apart. Now, in the span of an afternoon, everything had changed again. Yet as she watched Johnny securing the cabin, she felt a strange calm. Whatever came next, she wasn't facing it alone. Night fell over the cabin, bringing with it a heavy silence broken only by the occasional hoot of an owl or rustle of leaves. Johnny had built a small fire in the stone fireplace, its warm glow casting dancing shadows across the walls. Mia sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket he'd given her, watching as he returned from checking the perimeter. All clear, Johnny said, hanging his leather jacket on a hook by the door. He moved to the kitchenette, pulling out 2 cans of soup. Hope you like chicken noodle? It's not much, but it'll keep us going. It's perfect, Mia said, offering a small smile. Thank you again for all this. Johnny shrugged as he emptied the soup into a pot. Don't mention it. A comfortable silence fell between them as he worked. Mia studied his movements, the way he seemed constantly alert despite his calm exterior. After several minutes, her curiosity got the better of her. How did you learn to do all this? She asked. The survival stuff, I mean. Johnny stirred the soup slowly. Been on my own a long time. You pick things up. With the Hell's Angels? Mia ventured, noting how his shoulders stiffened slightly. He glanced at her, his expression guarded. You know about that, huh? The jacket gave it away, she admitted. I've done some photojournalism on motorcycle clubs. Johnny nodded, returning his attention to the soup. That was another life. What made you leave? Mia asked, then quickly added, Sorry, that's probably too personal. To her surprise, Johnny didn't shut down. Instead, he poured the soup into 2 bowls and brought them over, sitting across from her. I saw too many good men turn into something they never meant to be, he said after a long pause. And I was headed that way myself. He handed her a bowl. 15 years in that life changes you. One day I woke up and didn't recognize who I'd become. Mia blew on her spoonful of soup. So you just walked away? A hint of a smile crossed Johnny's face. Not that simple. But eventually, yeah. He gestured to the cabin around them. Found this place. Started over. Must have been hard, Mia said softly. Johnny's eyes met hers, surprisingly gentle for a man with such a hard exterior. What about you? You mentioned your father left? Mia nodded, surprised at her willingness to share with this stranger. I was 12. He just disappeared one day. No goodbye, no explanation. She stirred her soup absently. Mom never talked about why. She just shut down, threw herself into work. That's rough, Johnny said, his voice low with genuine sympathy. I used to make up stories about where he went, Mia continued, the words flowing easier than she expected. Maybe he was a secret agent, or saving the world somehow. She gave a sad laugh. Anything was better than thinking he just didn't want us anymore. Johnny nodded. Kids shouldn't have to make sense of things like that. I tried finding him a few years ago, Mia admitted. Hired a private investigator and everything. Any luck? She shook her head. Nothing solid. Just rumors that he might have gone south, maybe Mexico. She took another spoonful of soup. Eventually, I had to let it go. Some ghosts aren't meant to be chased, Johnny said, his voice carrying the weight of experience. They ate in silence for a while, the crackling of the fire filling the space between them. When they finished, Johnny took their bowls to the small sink. "You can take the bedroom," he said. "I'll sleep out here." "You sure?" Mia asked. "I'm sure." He checked his watch. "It's getting late." Mia nodded but made no move to go to bed. Instead, she stood and grabbed her jacket. "I think I need some air first. Clear my head a bit." Johnny frowned. "Not sure that's a good idea." "Just on the porch," Mia assured him. "I won't go far, I promise." After a moment of consideration, Johnny nodded. "Keep your voice down. Sound carries out here." Mia stepped outside into the cool night air, wrapping her arms around herself. The moon hung low and bright, illuminating the clearing around the cabin with a soft, silver glow. She walked to the edge of the porch and leaned against the railing, taking in deep breaths of pine-scented air. Behind her, the cabin stood warm and solid, a strange sanctuary with an even stranger protector. Johnny was unlike anyone she'd ever met, a complex mix of hardness and unexpected kindness. He'd saved her life today, but he was still a stranger with a past he only spoke of in fragments. Could she really trust him? A former Hell's Angel with skills that spoke of a life lived in the shadows? Yet something about his eyes when he spoke of leaving that life behind resonated with her. There was truth there, and maybe even regret. Mia looked up at the stars, so much brighter here than in the city. Her life had been turned upside down in a single day, and now her safety depended on this man she barely knew. The thought should have terrified her, but instead she felt an odd calm. Whatever Johnny's past might hold, his present actions spoke volumes. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, under the vast canopy of stars, Mia allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she had found someone she could trust. Morning light filtered through the cabin's dusty windows as Mia woke on Johnny's bed. She stretched, momentarily confused by her surroundings, until the events of the previous day came rushing back. The cartel, the chase, Johnny's rescue. She sat up, listening to the sounds of the cabin. A soft clanking from the kitchen told her Johnny was already awake. The smell of coffee drifted through the air, rich and inviting. Mia grabbed her camera bag from beside the bed, rifling through it for her journal. Her fingers found only her camera, some lenses and a few memory cards. "Great," she muttered. Her journal was probably still in her car, abandoned in town. Mia stepped into the main room, finding Johnny at the stove, frying eggs in a cast-iron pan. He nodded at her, his face unreadable as always. "Morning," he said. "Coffee's ready." "Thanks." Mia poured herself a cup. "Do you have any paper I could use? I usually write in the mornings, but my journal's back in my car." Johnny gestured toward a small desk in the corner. "Check the drawers. Should be something in there." Mia walked to the desk, setting her coffee down as she opened the top drawer. A few pens, some rubber bands, nothing useful. She tried the second drawer, finding it stuck. With a firm tug, it opened, revealing a stack of old envelopes and a yellowed notepad. "Perfect," she said, pulling out the notepad. As she did, her hand caught on an envelope at the bottom of the drawer, dragging it out with the pad. The envelope fell to the floor, its contents spilling out. A single folded letter. Mia picked it up, intending to return it to the drawer when the letterhead caught her eye. Brotherhood Eternal, with a skull insignia she recognized from her research on outlaw motorcycle gangs. She glanced at Johnny, who had his back to her, still focused on cooking. Her heart racing, she unfolded the letter. "Johnny," the letter began, "your loyalty to the Brotherhood has never been questioned. The job in Tucson proved your worth once again. The shipment arrived safe, and the competition has been dealt with permanently. Their territory is ours now. Mia's eyes widened as she continued reading. The letter detailed operations, territories, and what could only be described as violent takedowns of rival gangs. It mentioned money laundering, drug trafficking, and worse. The signature at the bottom made her blood run cold. Blade, National President. Blade. Even in her limited research on motorcycle gangs, Mia had come across that name. He was notorious, a legend in the criminal underworld, wanted in multiple states. And here was proof that Johnny had worked directly for him. Mia's hands shook as she quickly refolded the letter, shoving it back into the envelope. Her mind raced. Was Johnny still involved? Was this cabin some kind of safe house? Had she jumped from one danger into another? "Found what you need," Johnny called from the kitchen. Mia started, nearly dropping the letter. "Yes," she said, her voice higher than normal. She slipped the letter into her pocket, grabbing the notepad. "Just this notepad." Johnny turned, plates in hand. "Breakfast is ready." Throughout breakfast, Mia barely tasted the food, her mind consumed with questions. Johnny seemed to notice her tension, but didn't press. After they finished, he stood to clear the plates. "I'm going to check the perimeter again," he said. "Make sure we're still clear." As he reached for his jacket, Mia couldn't contain herself any longer. She pulled the letter from her pocket, holding it up. "What is this?" she demanded. Johnny froze, his eyes locked on the envelope. Recognition, then something like resignation passed across his face. "Where did you find that?" he asked quietly. "In the drawer. I wasn't snooping, it fell out." Mia stood, putting distance between them. "Are you still with them? With this Blade person?" Johnny shook his head slowly. "No, that's from a long time ago." "This isn't just some motorcycle club, is it?" Mia pressed, her voice rising. "This is serious crime. Murder, drugs, territory wars." She waved the letter. "Are these the people after me now? Is that why you really brought me here?" "Mia, no." Johnny's voice was firm, but controlled. "I left that life behind years ago. I told you last night." "You told me vague half-truths?" Mia cut him off. "This letter, these aren't just small-time crimes. You were working for one of the most dangerous gang leaders in the country." "I'm not denying my past," Johnny said, taking a step toward her. Mia backed away. "How do I know you're not still connected? How do I know this isn't all some setup?" Johnny stopped moving, pain flashing across his usually stoic features. "Because I risked everything to get out. Because I've spent the last 5 years rebuilding a life that has nothing to do with that world." Mia gripped the letter tightly, uncertainty washing over her. She'd begun to trust him, to see him as her protector. Now she wasn't sure what to believe. "I don't know if I can trust you," she whispered, the words hanging heavy in the air between them. Johnny stood perfectly still, his weathered face lined with emotion. The morning light streaming through the windows highlighted the scars on his hands that had seen more than their fair share of violence. "I won't lie to you, Mia," he said finally, his voice low and steady. "That letter, it's from a life I left behind. But it was my life for a long time." He moved slowly to sit on the couch, giving Mia plenty of space. She remained standing, the letter still clutched in her hand, her body tense with uncertainty. "I joined the Brotherhood when I was 20, Johnny continued. Young, angry, looking for somewhere to belong. He rubbed his hand over the faded tattoo on his forearm, a skull wrapped in chains. And they became my family, the only family I had. Mia watched him carefully, trying to read the truth in his eyes. This Blade person, he sounds dangerous. He is, Johnny nodded. One of the most dangerous men I've ever known, and I was loyal to him for nearly 20 years. The confession hung in the air between them. Mia felt her stomach tighten. 20 years in a violent gang wasn't something you just walked away from. What happened? She asked quietly. Johnny's eyes grew distant. We were doing a run in Nevada, supposed to be routine, deliver some merchandise, collect payment, but something went wrong. His voice hardened. There was a family at a gas station. Wrong place, wrong time. Blade wanted no witnesses. Mia's hand went to her mouth. Oh my God. I couldn't do it, Johnny said simply. Couldn't let it happen. So I made sure they got away. Blade knew it was me who tipped them off. And he let you live? Mia asked incredulously. A grim smile touched Johnny's lips. No, he tried to have me killed. I had to disappear, change my name, move across the country. I've been looking over my shoulder for 5 years. He stood up, walking to the window to check outside, a habit Mia now recognized as deeply ingrained vigilance. So that's why you live all the way out here, Mia said, understanding dawning. You're hiding too. Johnny nodded. This place belonged to my uncle, only person who ever showed me any kindness growing up. He left it to me when he died. No one in the Brotherhood knew about it. Mia sank down onto a chair, processing everything. The cartel members after me, they're not connected to your past? No, Johnny said firmly. Pure coincidence that I was there when you needed help. Or fate, maybe. I know what it's like to be hunted. The sincerity in his voice made something shift in Mia's chest. She studied his face. The hard lines, the guarded eyes that occasionally revealed flashes of genuine concern. I understand if you want to leave, Johnny said, breaking the silence. I can take you somewhere else. Somewhere you feel safe. Mia looked down at the letter, then back at Johnny. How do I know you're telling the truth? About leaving that life behind? Johnny walked over to a bookshelf and pulled out a small wooden box. He opened it and handed Mia a newspaper clipping. 5 years ago, he said. The headline read, Gas Station Massacre Averted. Anonymous Tip Saves Family of 4. Mia scanned the article, her hands trembling slightly. You were the anonymous caller? Yes. She looked up at him, seeing him with new eyes. A complicated man with a violent past who had made one right choice that cost him everything. I don't know what to believe, Mia admitted. Part of me wants to trust you, but I'm still a stranger with a dangerous history, Johnny finished for her. I get it. The cabin fell silent except for the soft ticking of a clock. Outside, birds called to each other in the trees surrounding the property. It'll be dark soon, Johnny said finally. Whatever you decide, you shouldn't leave tonight. These roads aren't safe after dark, especially if someone's looking for you. Mia nodded slowly. I'll stay tonight. She carefully folded the letter and placed it on the table between them. I'm grateful for what you did for me yesterday. I really am. I need time to process all this. Fair enough, Johnny said, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. The bedroom's yours. I'll take the couch. As evening approached, Mia retreated to the bedroom, her mind swirling with conflicting emotions. She was torn between gratitude for Johnny's protection and lingering suspicion about his past. The letter had revealed a man deeply embedded in a world of violence and crime. Yet his eyes told a different story, one of regret, redemption, and a genuine desire to help. She sat on the edge of the bed, listening to Johnny moving quietly around the cabin, securing doors and windows for the night. A protector with blood on his hands. A dangerous man trying to do good. Mia didn't know what to believe anymore. But for tonight at least, she would stay. Morning light filtered through the cabin windows, casting long shadows across the wooden floor. Mia emerged from the bedroom, her hair slightly tousled from a restless night. The smell of coffee and something sweet guided her to the kitchen. Johnny stood at the stove, his back to her. He wore a faded black t-shirt that revealed the edges of tattoos snaking up his neck and down his arms. At the sound of her footsteps, he turned. "Morning," he said, his voice gruff but not unkind. "Coffee's fresh. Figured you might be hungry." On the table sat 2 plates of pancakes, steam rising in delicate wisps. Mia hesitated, then slid into a chair. "Thank you," she said quietly. Johnny poured her a mug of coffee and placed it beside her plate. His movements were careful, deliberate, like a man who knew his own strength and was conscious not to intimidate. "Sugar's there if you want it," he said, nodding toward a small ceramic bowl. Mia added a spoonful to her coffee and stirred, watching the small whirlpool form in the dark liquid. The silence between them was heavy with unspoken words, but somehow not uncomfortable. Johnny sat across from her and began eating. Up close, in the morning light, he looked more human than she'd first thought. The lines around his eyes spoke of worry and laughter both. His hands, though scarred and calloused, cut his pancakes with surprising grace. "Sleep okay?" he asked after a while. Mia nodded, though it wasn't entirely true. "Well enough." She took a bite of pancake, surprised by how good it tasted. "These are really good." A hint of a smile touched Johnny's lips. "My uncle taught me. Said every man should know how to cook at least one decent meal." "Smart uncle," Mia replied, feeling some of the tension ease from her shoulders. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Through the window, birds flitted between the trees, and somewhere in the distance, a woodpecker tapped rhythmically. "About last night," Mia finally said, setting down her fork. "I appreciate your honesty." Johnny looked at her, his blue eyes steady. "Didn't have much choice. You found the letter." "You could have lied." He shrugged one shoulder. "Never been much good at that. Besides, you deserved the truth." Mia sipped her coffee, studying him over the rim of her mug. "How long have you lived here?" 5 years this October," he said. "Came straight here after—" He didn't finish the sentence, but Mia understood. After he'd betrayed his brotherhood. After he'd chosen to save a family instead of following orders. "It's peaceful," she offered. Johnny nodded. "That's why I stay. After all those years of chaos and noise, peace is worth protecting." Something in his tone made Mia believe him. Whatever his past, this man valued the quiet life he'd built here. "I should check the perimeter," Johnny said, finishing his coffee. "Make sure everything's secure. Feel free to look around inside. Mi casa es su casa, at least until we figure out what to do about your situation." He stood, rinsed his plate in the sink, and headed outside. Mia watched him through the window as he walked the property line, his posture alert yet relaxed in his element. After finishing her breakfast, Mia decided to explore the cabin more thoroughly by daylight. The main room was simple but comfortable, with well-worn furniture and a stone fireplace. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with an eclectic mix of titles, from motorcycle repair manuals to classic literature. In the corner stood a small desk, neat and organized. Mia ran her fingers along the smooth wooden surface, noticing a drawer slightly ajar. She hesitated, then gently pulled it open. Inside was a silver picture frame, face down. Curiosity getting the better of her, Mia carefully lifted it. The photograph showed Johnny, looking years younger and almost unrecognizable, with a smile that transformed his face. His arm was around a beautiful woman with kind eyes, and dark, curly hair. They stood in front of a small house, flowers blooming in window boxes. "That's Sarah." Johnny's voice from the doorway startled her. Mia nearly dropped the frame, fumbling to set it back. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pry," she said quickly. Johnny crossed the room slowly, taking the frame from her hands. His face was unreadable as he looked down at the photograph. "My wife," he said softly. "She died 7 years ago. Cancer." The vulnerability in his voice was unmistakable, a crack in the armor he wore so carefully. "She's beautiful," Mia said gently. Johnny nodded, his thumb brushing over the image. "She was the best thing in my life, the only good thing, for a long time." He set the frame upright on the desk, positioning it carefully. "She never knew about the Brotherhood. I kept that part of my life separate, wanted to keep her safe." For the first time, Mia saw something beyond the tough exterior. A man who had loved deeply and lost. A man with regrets and pain, and a history more complex than she'd imagined. "I'm sorry," she said simply. Johnny looked at her, his eyes filled with a sorrow that words couldn't touch. "Yeah," he replied. "Me too." The afternoon sun slanted through the trees as Johnny chopped firewood outside the cabin. With each swing of the axe, he felt his muscles working, releasing some of the tension that had been building since Mia had found the letter. The rhythmic thud of metal splitting wood was almost meditative. He paused, wiping sweat from his brow, when the distant sound of a motorcycle engine broke the silence. Johnny's body tensed instantly. Few people knew the location of his cabin, and fewer still would approach without warning. He set down the axe and moved to the edge of the clearing, one hand resting near the knife at his belt. The motorcycle came into view, a sleek black Harley with chrome details that glinted in the sunlight. Johnny recognized both bike and rider immediately. "Viper," he muttered under his breath. The rider killed the engine and removed his helmet, revealing a lean face with a jagged scar running from temple to jaw. Viper had been Johnny's right-hand man in the Brotherhood years ago, one of the few who hadn't turned against him when he'd walked away. "Been a long time, brother," Viper said, dismounting. His eyes scanned the clearing, taking in the cabin and the chopped wood. "Nice setup you got here." Johnny didn't move closer. "How'd you find me?" Viper smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You taught me well. Besides, some ghosts don't stay buried." Inside the cabin, Johnny could see Mia peering out the window, her face a mask of concern. He gave a subtle nod to indicate she should stay inside. "What do you want?" Johnny asked, crossing his arms over his chest. Viper's expression turned serious. "Came to warn you. The cartel. They're looking for someone, and word is they think you've got her." Johnny kept his face neutral. "And why would you care?" "Because they've been talking to Cruz." Viper spat on the ground. "And any friend of Cruz is no friend of yours or mine." Johnny felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. Cruz had been the Brotherhood's enforcer, brutal, sadistic, and the one who'd sworn to kill Johnny for his betrayal. "Cruz is working with the cartel now?" Johnny asked, his voice low. Viper nodded. "Has been for a while. They're moving product through the old routes, and now they're on the hunt." He glanced towards the cabin. "Is she in there, the photographer?" Johnny stepped forward, blocking Viper's line of sight. "How do you know about her?" "It's all over the underground channels. Girl who saw something she shouldn't have. Disappeared with a mysterious biker." Viper pulled out a cigarette and lit it. "Didn't take a genius to connect the dots when they started asking about a guy matching your description." Johnny ran a hand over his face. "How close are they?" Too close for comfort. They hit 3 towns yesterday, showing her picture around. It's only a matter of time before they track you here. Viper took a long drag. Cruz is leading the search himself. Says he's got a personal score to settle. With the girl? Johnny asked, confusion evident in his voice. That's the part I couldn't figure out. But he wants her bad, Johnny. And you know Cruz, he doesn't stop until he gets what he wants. Johnny nodded slowly, his mind racing through options. Thanks for the warning. Viper finished his cigarette and crushed it under his boot. Don't thank me yet. I didn't just come to warn you. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small prepaid phone. This came through our old channels. It's addressed to the girl. Johnny took the phone, turning it over in his hand. What is it? Text messages. Started coming in yesterday. Someone's trying to scare her, Johnny, and they know she's with you. Johnny's jaw tightened. You read them? Just enough to know you both need to watch your backs. Viper swung a leg over his motorcycle. I've got to go before someone realizes I came here. But Johnny... He paused, his expression grim. If Cruz finds you, there won't be any mercy. Not for you? Not for her? Johnny watched as Viper revved his engine and disappeared back into the trees. Only when the sound had faded completely did he turn towards the cabin, the phone heavy in his hand. Inside, Mia stood by the window, her arms wrapped around herself. Who was that? She asked, her voice tight with worry. An old friend, Johnny replied, closing the door behind him. One of the few I have left. Mia's eyes fell to the phone in his hand. What's that? Johnny hesitated, then held it out to her. It's for you. Text messages. Mia took the phone with trembling fingers. As she scrolled through the messages, her face paled. How did they get my number? Johnny moved beside her to look at the screen. The messages were brief but chilling. We know who has you. He can't protect you. Your father sends his regards. Stay away from the biker. He'll get you killed. We're coming for you both. The last message had been sent only an hour ago. Ask him about Cruz. Ask him what he did. Mia sat cross-legged on the bed, the prepaid phone clutched in her trembling hands. The words on the screen blurred as tears threatened to spill. Her father sends his regards. The message echoed in her mind, opening old wounds she thought had long healed over. You okay? Johnny leaned against the doorframe, his face etched with concern. Mia quickly wiped her eyes. I don't understand. How could my father be involved in this? Johnny entered the room and sat on the wooden chair across from her. You said you never knew him. I didn't. He left when I was 3. Mia set the phone down and pulled her knees to her chest. My mom hardly ever talked about him. Said he chose a different life, one that didn't include us. The cabin fell silent except for the distant call of birds outside. Johnny waited, giving her space to process. I need to know, Mia finally said, her voice stronger. If he's connected to these people, maybe that's why they're after me. Maybe it's not just about what I saw. Johnny nodded slowly. What do you remember about him? Almost nothing. Just fragments. Mia closed her eyes, trying to recall. His name was Daniel Rivera. Mom kept a box of his things in the attic. I found it when I was 13. She got up and went to her backpack, pulling out a small leather journal. I carry this everywhere. It's the only thing I have from him. She handed it to Johnny. There's not much inside. Some notes, a few addresses, old phone numbers. Johnny carefully opened the worn journal, thumbing through pages filled with scribbled notes in Spanish and English. You ever try to track him down with these? Once in college. I hired a private investigator. Mia laughed humorlessly. Complete waste of money. Every lead went cold. It was like he disappeared. Johnny stopped on a page with a list of names. His expression changed, eyes narrowing. "What is it?" Mia asked. "This name, Alejandro Fuentes." Johnny tapped the page. "He's high up in the Sinaloa cartel. Has been for decades." Mia felt her stomach drop. "You're sure?" Johnny nodded grimly. "In my old life, you learn who the major players are. For protection, if nothing else." Mia took the journal back, staring at the name. The handwriting beside it noted, "Compadre, Miami, 98. Her father had written this. Her father had known a cartel leader. "I need internet," she said suddenly, standing up. "Is there anywhere nearby with service?" "There's a diner about 20 miles south. They have Wi-Fi." Johnny hesitated. "But it's not safe for you to be seen." "Then you'll have to go for me." Mia grabbed a notebook and started writing. "I need you to search these names, these connections. Please, Johnny, I need to know who my father really is." Johnny took the list, scanning it with a frown. "This could open doors you don't want opened, Mia." "They're already open," she replied, her voice quiet but determined. "Someone's after me because of who my father is. I deserve to know the truth." Johnny left an hour later, reluctantly leaving Mia alone with a handgun for protection and strict instructions to stay inside. She paced the small cabin, anxiety gnawing at her insides. As the hours crept by, she continued searching through her father's journal, looking for anything she might have missed. Under the fading light, she noticed something she'd never seen before, indentations on the back cover. She grabbed a pencil and lightly shaded over the area, revealing a sequence of numbers, a code or a phone number perhaps. By the time Johnny returned as dusk was settling, Mia had filled 3 pages of her own notebook with theories and connections. Johnny laid printouts and handwritten notes on the kitchen table. "I found him," he said without preamble. Mia's heart nearly stopped. "My father?" Johnny nodded, pointing to a news article. "Daniel Rivera. He changed his name to Diego Ramirez 15 years ago. He's not just connected to the cartel, Mia. According to this, he runs the entire East Coast distribution." Mia stared at the grainy photo accompanying the article. The man had her eyes, her jawline. There was no denying the resemblance. "There's more," Johnny said, his voice gentle now. "He has another family. A wife, 2 teenage sons. They live in a mansion outside Miami." Mia felt as if the floor had dropped from beneath her. Her father hadn't just abandoned her. He'd replaced her, started over with a new identity, a new family. All while she'd spent years wondering why she hadn't been enough. "The cartel members who saw you," Johnny continued. "They must have recognized you. You look like him, Mia." "That's why they're after me," she whispered. "Not just because of what I saw, but because of who I am." She looked up at Johnny, conflict etched across her face. "I need to confront him. After all these years, I deserve answers." "It's too dangerous," Johnny warned. "These people don't play by normal rules." "He's my father," Mia insisted, her voice cracking. "Don't I have the right to look him in the eye and ask why he left me?" Johnny reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "You do. But rushing in without a plan could get you killed. Your father's world is violent and unforgiving." Mia pulled her hand away, standing up to look out the window at the darkening forest. 2 paths stretched before her. Confront the father who'd abandoned her and possibly find the answers she'd sought her entire life, or stay hidden away with Johnny, the man who'd saved her but carried his own dangerous past. "What should I do?" she asked, more to herself than to Johnny. Johnny watched as Mia paced the cabin, her fingers tracing the photo of her father. The evening shadow stretched across the wooden floors, matching the darkness in her eyes. "I'll help you find him," Johnny said finally, breaking the silence. Mia turned, hope and doubt fighting for control of her expression. You will? Yes. Johnny stood, crossing to where she stood by the window. But we do this my way. Smart, careful. Relief flooded Mia's face. She nodded quickly. Thank you. Johnny ran a hand through his hair, already mapping out a plan. I know people who can help us track him safely. Old contacts. The same people from your past? Mia asked quietly. The ones in that letter? Some of them. Johnny's jaw tightened. I left that life, but I didn't burn every bridge. Some debts work both ways. That night, they spread maps across the kitchen table. Johnny marked locations with a red pen, connecting dots that formed a path leading south. We'll start with Roy in Tulsa, Johnny explained. He owes me. He's got connections with border traffic. Might know your father's movements. Can we trust him? Mia asked. Johnny's mouth formed a grim line. No, but he'll talk to me. They packed lightly, only essentials. Johnny loaded his old duffel bag with clothes, cash, and a burner phone. He carefully wrapped a handgun in a soft cloth, tucking it deep into the bag. We leave at dawn, he said. Try to get some sleep. Sleep didn't come easily for either of them. Mia tossed on the small bed, dreaming of a father with her eyes but a stranger's face. Johnny sat in the darkness of the living room, cleaning his gun by feel, confronting ghosts he thought he'd left behind. Morning arrived with pale fingers of light stretching across the horizon. They loaded Johnny's motorcycle, Mia climbing on behind him. As they pulled away from the cabin, she wrapped her arms around his waist, clinging to the only safety she knew. The highway stretched before them like a promise, endless and uncertain. Wind whipped at their faces as Johnny pushed the motorcycle faster, eating up miles under the rising sun. Mia pressed her cheek against his back, finding comfort in his solid presence. By afternoon, they reached Tulsa. Johnny guided the bike through back streets until they reached a rundown auto shop. A large man with grease-stained overalls looked up as they pulled in. Well, I'll be damned, the man said, wiping his hands on a dirty rag. Johnny Mercer. Roy. Johnny's voice was neutral as they dismounted. Been a while. Roy's eyes flicked to Mia, then back to Johnny. Thought you were dead, or wished you were. Need information, Johnny said, ignoring the comment. Private. Inside the office, Roy locked the door behind them. The space smelled of oil and cigarettes. This about the Sinaloa business? Roy asked, dropping into a creaking chair. Johnny's face revealed nothing. What have you heard? That someone's daughter saw something she shouldn't. Roy's eyes settled on Mia with new interest. Guess that's you, sweetheart. Mia straightened her spine. I'm looking for my father, Daniel Rivera. Now goes by Diego Ramirez. Roy whistled low. Rivera's kid? No wonder they're hunting you. He turned to Johnny. You sure know how to pick 'em, brother. The information, Roy, Johnny pressed. Roy opened a filing cabinet, pulling out a battered notebook. Rivera's careful, smart, changes locations every few weeks. He flipped pages. Last I heard, he was operating out of a compound near Jacksonville, coastal property. He scribbled an address, sliding it across the desk. You didn't get this from me. One more thing, Johnny said. We'll need new papers, clean IDs. Roy nodded slowly. That'll cost you. Put it on my tab, Johnny replied. Roy laughed, the sound harsh in the small room. Your tab's already longer than your list of sins, Johnny. But for old time's sake... He reached for his phone. Give me till morning. They found a motel on the outskirts of town. Johnny took the chair by the window, watching the parking lot with vigilant eyes. You knew him well? Mia asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. Roy? Johnny's face remained impassive. We rode together. Long time ago. He seemed scared of you. Johnny turned to her. People fear what they don't understand. And what don't they understand about you? Mia pressed. Johnny's eyes, usually guarded, held something raw. Why I left, why I didn't look back. He turned back to the window. Get some rest. Tomorrow we see a man in Memphis who specializes in new identities. Mia watched him. This man of contradictions, who moved between worlds with dangerous ease. For the first time, she wondered if finding her father was worth bringing Johnny back into the life he'd fought to escape. The Memphis skyline faded in the rearview mirror as Johnny drove their borrowed car toward the outskirts of the city. Roy's contact had come through with new IDs. Johnny now carried papers identifying him as John Miller and Mia as his niece, Maria. We're meeting Vega at a place called Riverside Diner, Johnny said, his eyes constantly checking the mirrors. He worked for your father's organization for years before going independent. Mia clutched her new ID in her hand, running her thumb over the laminated surface. Will he recognize me? Doubtful. From what Roy said, Vega never met you. The diner sat nestled against the Mississippi River, its neon sign flickering in the afternoon sun. A bell jingled as they entered, and Johnny immediately scanned the room. Exits, windows, patrons. His gaze settled on a thin man in the corner booth, wearing a white linen shirt despite the cool weather. That's him, Johnny murmured. They approached the booth, and the man looked up, dark eyes widening slightly at the sight of Johnny. Sit, Vega said, his accent thick. He gestured to the bench across from him. Johnny slid in first, positioning himself between Mia and the door. So, Vega said after they ordered coffee, Roy says you seek information about Rivera. We need to find him, Johnny replied. Vega's gaze shifted to Mia, studying her face with uncomfortable intensity. And why would I help you find such a dangerous man? Mia met his stare. Because he's my father. A flicker of surprise crossed Vega's features before he regained his composure. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Rivera has no daughter. He abandoned me and my mother 20 years ago, Mia said firmly. Whether he acknowledges me or not, I am his daughter. Vega sat back, reassessing her. You have his eyes, he finally admitted. The waitress delivered their coffees, and they fell silent until she was out of earshot. Rivera is not a man you find, Vega continued, stirring sugar into his cup. He is a man who finds you, usually when you least want him to. We need to try, Johnny insisted. Vega's expression hardened. The last person who went looking for Rivera without invitation was found floating in the Gulf, in pieces. Mia paled, but kept her voice steady. Please, I need answers. Answers, Vega repeated with a bitter laugh. The only answer Rivera gives is death to those who cross him. Johnny's patience was wearing thin. We didn't come for warnings. The tension between the men grew thick. Vega's hand disappeared beneath the table, and Johnny shifted subtly, ready to move if necessary. I respected you once, Vega said quietly to Johnny. You were feared. Legendary. Now you risk everything for this girl? The information, Johnny pressed. Vega studied him, then nodded slightly. Rivera has a compound on the Florida coast, as Roy told you, but he won't be there. Then where? There's a gathering, annual meeting of cartel leadership at a private island off Savannah. 3 days from now. Vega's eyes narrowed. Rivera will be there, heavily guarded. How do we get there? Mia asked. You don't, Vega replied flatly. Unless you wish to die. Johnny leaned forward. There must be a way. Vega hesitated, then sighed. I have a contact. Supplies the island with food, liquor. If you're determined to go, he might smuggle you on his boat." He scribbled on a napkin. "Carlos, Charleston Harbor, but I never gave you this." Johnny took the napkin, tucking it into his pocket. "Appreciated." As they stood to leave, Vega grabbed Johnny's wrist. "The people hunting her know you're helping. They've put bounties on both your heads." "How much?" Johnny asked calmly. "Enough to make every criminal from here to Florida start looking." Vega released his grip. "Watch your back, old friend." They left the diner, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the parking lot. Johnny ushered Mia quickly to their car, his eyes scanning constantly. "Did you believe him?" Mia asked as they pulled onto the highway. Johnny nodded. "Vega doesn't lie, not about business." As they drove south toward Charleston, Johnny's unease grew. Twice he spotted the same blue sedan several cars back. When they stopped for gas, a man inside the convenience store watched them too intently. "Change of plans," Johnny said, pulling abruptly onto a side road. "We're being followed." "Are you sure?" "Same car for the last 50 miles, and the clerk back there was on his phone the second we walked in." Johnny turned down increasingly smaller roads, eventually pulling behind an abandoned barn. He killed the engine and sat listening, the silence broken only by their breathing and distant highway sounds. "They're tracking us," he said grimly. "We need to ditch this car." The rain started as they abandoned their car, trudging through muddy fields to reach the outskirts of a small industrial area. Johnny kept them moving through the darkness, his senses alert to every sound. Mia's shoes were soaked through, but she didn't complain. "There." Johnny pointed to a large, corrugated metal building standing apart from the others. "That's the place Roy mentioned." The warehouse loomed against the night sky, its windows broken and dark. A chain-link fence surrounded the property, topped with rusted barbed wire. "Doesn't look like anyone's been here for years," Mia whispered as they crouched behind a dumpster across the street. Johnny shook his head. "That's the point. Best hideouts look abandoned." They watched for 20 minutes before Johnny was satisfied. He led them to a section of fence where the bottom had been pulled up, creating a gap just large enough to squeeze through. "Stay close," he murmured as they slipped onto the property. Inside, the warehouse smelled of motor oil and damp concrete. Johnny pulled a small flashlight from his pocket, keeping the beam pointed downward. The space was largely empty, with dusty machinery pushed against the walls and wooden pallets stacked in corners. "I don't see anything related to the cartel," Mia said, her voice hushed. Johnny moved toward the back of the building. "It wouldn't be obvious." They found a metal staircase leading to an office overlooking the main floor. The door was unlocked. Inside, beneath a layer of dust, sat a desk with an old computer and file cabinets lined against the wall. "This is it," Johnny said, pulling on a pair of gloves. "Help me search." They worked methodically through the drawers. Most contained ordinary business papers, shipping manifests, employee records, maintenance logs, all for a company called Riverfront Logistics that had supposedly closed years ago. "Here," Mia said suddenly, holding up a folder. "These shipping records are from last month." Johnny took the folder, scanning the contents. "Dummy Corporation. See these destinations. All known cartel distribution points." Mia peered at the documents. "And look at the signature authorizing these shipments." The scrawled signature at the bottom read M. Rivera. "My father," she whispered, her face paling in the flashlight's glow. Johnny nodded grimly. "This warehouse is part of their supply chain. They move product through here disguised as legitimate shipping." Mia rifled through more papers, her movements becoming frantic. There's more. Look at these bank statements. The statements showed transfers to offshore accounts, coded references, and payment schedules. One name appeared repeatedly. Archangel Enterprises. That's him, Johnny said, his voice tight. Your father's code name in the organization is Archangel. Mia sat heavily in the desk chair. He's not just connected to the cartel, he's running it. Johnny continued searching while Mia processed this revelation. In a hidden compartment beneath the desk, he found a laptop and several phones. Jackpot, he murmured, powering up the laptop. The screen flickered to life, requesting a password. Johnny tried several combinations before the system unlocked. You know their security protocols? Mia asked. They haven't changed much in 15 years, Johnny replied, navigating through encrypted files. Something in his tone made Mia look up. Johnny's face had changed. His expression hardened as he stared at the screen. The blue light cast harsh shadows across his features, highlighting the scar along his jawline. Johnny? He didn't respond, lost in whatever he was seeing. His hands had frozen over the keyboard, and his breathing became shallow. Johnny, she repeated, touching his arm. He flinched violently, knocking over a cup of pens. For a moment his eyes were wild, unseeing, before recognition dawned. I'm sorry, he said roughly. I just remembered something. On the screen was a photograph. Younger men standing around motorcycles, arms slung over each other's shoulders. In the center stood Johnny, his face unmarked by the years and hardships that would follow. That's me, he said unnecessarily. With Rivera and his crew, before everything went bad. Mia studied the image. Her father stood beside Johnny, both men smiling easily, unaware of how their paths would diverge. What happened? She asked softly. Johnny's eyes grew distant. They wanted to expand into human trafficking. I refused. His hand unconsciously touched the scar on his face. They tried to convince me. When that didn't work, they came for my wife. The raw pain in his voice made Mia's chest tighten. I couldn't save her, he whispered. But I made them pay. 7 men. I killed them all. His hands trembled slightly. Then I disappeared. Until now. Mia saw tears in his eyes before he blinked them away. This man who had seemed so fearless, so invulnerable, suddenly looked broken. The weight of his past pressed visibly on his shoulders, and in that moment, Mia understood the true cost of the life he'd led, and what it meant that he was risking everything to help her. She reached out and took his hand, saying nothing. Sometimes words weren't enough. The address led them to a small cafe on the edge of town. Unlike the abandoned warehouse, this place was alive with the morning bustle of customers. Johnny parked his motorcycle a block away, and they walked the rest of the distance. Are you sure this is right? Mia asked, eyeing the cheerful blue awning and window boxes filled with geraniums. Johnny nodded. Rosa Diaz. Worked as your father's accountant for years before retiring. If anyone knows the inner workings of the cartel's finances, it's her. Inside, the cafe smelled of fresh coffee and cinnamon. An elderly woman sat alone at a corner table, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. She glanced up as they entered, her eyes narrowing slightly at Johnny. I'll keep watch, Johnny said quietly. She'll talk more freely without me there. Mia approached the table alone, her heart pounding. Ms. Diaz, I'm Mia Lawson. The woman's expression softened. I know who you are, child. Sit. Mia slid into the chair across from her. Up close, Rosa's face was lined with age, but her dark eyes remained sharp and alert. You look like him, Rosa said, studying Mia's face. Same eyes, same way of holding your head. You knew my father well? Mia asked. Rosa took a sip of her tea. 20 years. I managed his accounts, both legitimate and otherwise. She spoke matter-of-factly, as if discussing the weather rather than criminal enterprises. Is he still involved with the cartel? Involved? Rosa laughed softly. Miguel Rivera doesn't just work for the cartel, he built it from nothing. Archangel, they call him. The one who watches from above, deciding who lives and who dies. Mia's stomach twisted. And did he ever mention me? Rosa's expression softened again. All the time. He kept track of you, you know, every school you attended, every award you won, every boyfriend you dated. What? Mia felt suddenly cold. He's been watching me? From a distance, yes, he has a file. Rosa hesitated. He has photographs of you growing up, your high school graduation, that photography exhibition you did in Seattle 3 years ago. Mia's mind reeled. All those years she'd felt abandoned, forgotten, and he had been there in the shadows, watching her life unfold without him. Why? She whispered. Why leave me if he cared enough to follow my life? Rosa placed her weathered hand over Mia's. After your mother died, he believed his enemies would use you to get to him. He thought you would be safer away from him. That was his choice to make, not mine, Mia said, anger rising in her voice. Yes, Rosa agreed, simply, and he's paid for it every day since. The man has everything, money, power, respect, and nothing that matters. Does he know I'm looking for him now? Rosa nodded. He knows everything that happens in his territory. He knows you're with Johnny Sullivan. Her gaze drifted to where Johnny stood by the window, vigilant. An interesting choice of protector. Johnny saved my life. I'm sure he did. Rosa's smile was enigmatic. Miguel will want to see you. I'm not sure I want to see him, Mia replied, her voice catching. Rosa reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope. My address is inside. Come tonight if you want to know more. Bring your guardian angel if you must, though Miguel won't like it. She stood, placing a gentle hand on Mia's shoulder. Whatever you decide, remember this. Your father is not a good man, but he loves you in his way. That truth can be hard to reconcile. After Rosa left, Mia remained at the table, staring at the envelope in her hands. Johnny joined her, sliding into the vacant chair. You okay? He asked quietly. Mia shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. He's been watching me, Johnny. All these years he knew exactly where I was, what I was doing. He had the power to be in my life, and he chose not to be. Johnny said nothing, simply reaching across the table to take her hand. I don't know if I want to meet him, she continued, her voice breaking. What if it's better to just let him stay a mystery? What if knowing him only makes it worse? That's your choice, Johnny said gently. Whatever you decide, I'm here. Mia looked at him through her tears, at this scarred, complicated man who had become her unlikely anchor. Why? Why are you still helping me? Johnny's thumb traced circles on her hand. Because everyone deserves answers, even if they're not the ones we want to hear. Mia nodded slowly, clutching the envelope tighter. I need some time to think. Take all the time you need, Johnny said. I'm not going anywhere. The drive back to Johnny's cabin was quiet. Mia stared out the window, watching the landscape blur past, her mind still reeling from Rosa's revelations. Johnny kept his eyes on the road, giving her the space she needed to process everything. Back at the cabin, the familiarity of the place that had once felt like a prison now wrapped around Mia like a comforting blanket. She moved to the worn couch and sank into it, suddenly exhausted. Johnny busied himself in the kitchen, and soon the rich aroma of coffee filled the air. He returned with 2 steaming mugs, handing one to Mia before sitting beside her, leaving just enough space between them. "Thank you," she said, warming her hands around the mug. "Not just for the coffee, for everything." Johnny nodded, his eyes fixed on the window where afternoon light streamed in. "You don't need to thank me." "I do, though." Mia turned to face him. 2 weeks ago, I was just taking photos, living my life. Now I'm running from cartel members and discovering my father is some kind of crime lord. Most people would have walked away from this mess." A hint of a smile touched Johnny's lips. "Most people aren't me?" "No," Mia agreed softly. "They're not." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, sipping their coffee. Outside, birds called to each other in the trees surrounding the cabin. It was hard to believe danger lurked beyond this peaceful moment. "What was your wife like?" Mia asked suddenly. Johnny's expression shifted, surprise giving way to something more vulnerable. He set his mug down on the coffee table. "Sarah was sunshine," he said finally. "Always smiling, always seeing the good in people, even in me." He paused. "She knew who I was, what I'd done, but she looked at me and saw someone worth saving. She sounds wonderful. She was." Johnny's voice grew quiet. "After she died, I figured that was it for me. One shot at something good, and I'd lost it." Mia reached out, her fingers brushing against his arm. "I'm sorry. I kept to myself after that. Figured it was safer that way." Johnny looked at her, his eyes holding hers. "Until you showed up." The weight of his words hung between them, unspoken feelings filling the space. Mia felt her heart quicken. "I've been alone too," she admitted. "Different way, I guess. I had friends, relationships, but I always felt like something was missing. Like I was just going through the motions. And now? Now I'm terrified," she said with a small laugh. "But also, I don't know. More awake somehow." Johnny nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Life has a way of shaking us up when we least expect it." Mia set her mug down and pulled her knees up to her chest. "When this is all over, what happens then? That depends on what you want to happen. What if I don't know what I want?" Johnny reached out slowly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered against her cheek. "Then you take your time figuring it out. No rush." Mia leaned into his touch, surprised by how natural it felt. 2 weeks ago, she would have flinched away from this scarred, tattooed man. Now she couldn't imagine facing the world without him beside her. "I never thought I'd say this," she whispered, "but I'm glad I witnessed that cartel deal. I'm glad you found me." Johnny's eyes softened. "I'm glad I found you too." The moment stretched between them, fragile and new. Mia felt something shift inside her, walls she'd built long ago beginning to crumble. This man who had once seemed so dangerous now felt like her safest harbor. "Whatever you decide about your father," Johnny said, "I'll be right there with you. You're not alone in this." Mia nodded, feeling tears prick her eyes. She reached for his hand, intertwining her fingers with his. His palm was rough against hers, a lifetime of hard living etched into his skin. But his touch was gentle, almost reverent. "We should get ready," she said finally. "Figure out our next move." Johnny squeezed her hand. "Yeah, we should." But neither of them moved, content for just a little longer to exist in this moment where the past couldn't touch them, and the future hadn't yet arrived. The morning light streamed through the cabin windows as Mia stood at the counter, sipping her coffee. Johnny was outside checking the perimeter, a morning ritual he'd maintained since they'd returned from their meeting with Rosa. 3 days had passed, and they'd been planning their next move carefully. Mia set her mug down and walked to the window, watching Johnny's broad shoulders as he moved around the property. Something had shifted between them since their conversation on the couch. A warmth, an understanding that didn't need words. The sound of tires on gravel broke her thoughts. Johnny's head snapped up, instantly alert. Mia froze. They weren't expecting anyone. Johnny motioned for her to get back from the window, and she complied, heart pounding. A car door slammed. Then footsteps, steady and purposeful, approached the cabin. Johnny moved quickly to the door, positioning himself protectively as a sharp knock echoed through the cabin. "Who is it?" Johnny called out, his voice controlled but tense. "I'm here for my daughter." The voice sent a jolt through Mia's body. Though she'd never heard it before, something in her recognized it instantly. Her father. Johnny glanced at her, questioning. Mia nodded shakily. With one hand hovering near the knife at his belt, Johnny opened the door. The man who stood on the threshold was tall, with salt and pepper hair and eyes the same shade of green as Mia's. He wore an expensive suit that seemed out of place in the woodland setting. His gaze swept past Johnny to land on Mia. "Hello, Mia," he said, his voice softer now. "It's been a long time." Mia stood frozen, unable to speak. This man, the phantom who had shaped her life through his absence, was suddenly impossibly real. "How did you find us?" Johnny demanded. The man's expression hardened as he turned to Johnny. "I've known where my daughter was since the day she witnessed that exchange. Did you think I wouldn't keep tabs on her after you took her?" "You've been watching us?" Mia finally found her voice. "All this time?" Her father stepped inside, uninvited. Johnny tensed but allowed it, keeping himself between the visitor and Mia. "I've been protecting you the only way I could," her father said, "by staying away. But when I heard you were with him," he jerked his head toward Johnny, "I couldn't stay away any longer." "Protecting me?" Mia's voice rose. "You abandoned me and Mom. You were never there. Not once." Pain flashed across her father's face. "I had my reasons." "Your reasons?" Mia laughed bitterly. "Let me guess. You were too busy running with the cartel to bother with a family?" "It was more complicated than that." "Then explain it to me," Mia demanded. "Explain why my mother died alone, why I grew up without a father, why I'm now running for my life because I accidentally saw something I shouldn't have." Her father's eyes darkened. "I left to keep you both safe. The further you were from me, the less likely you'd become targets." His gaze shifted to Johnny. "And now you're living with a former Hell's Angel. Do you have any idea who this man is? What he's done?" "I know enough," Mia said firmly. "You know nothing." Her father took a step forward. "He's using you, Mia. Whatever he's told you." "That's enough," Johnny interrupted, his voice dangerously quiet. "You've said your piece." "I'm not finished," her father snapped. "Mia, you need to come with me. Now. These people won't stop looking for you, and he can't protect you." Mia shook her head, anger rising. "Where were you when I needed protecting before? You don't get to show up after 30 years and play father?" Her father's composure cracked. "You think this is a game? The men looking for you will tear this place apart. They'll kill him." He pointed at Johnny. "And they'll take you to make an example." "Why should I believe you care?" "Because despite what you think, you're my daughter." His voice rose, echoing through the cabin. "Everything I've done, every choice I've made, was to keep you safe." Johnny moved forward, placing himself firmly between Mia and her father. "That's enough. You need to leave." Her father's face contorted with rage. "You dare to stand between me and my daughter? Do you know who I am? What I could do to you with one phone call?" "I don't care who you are," Johnny said, his voice steady despite the tension radiating from him. "You're upsetting Mia, and that means it's time for you to go." "Mia," her father pleaded, looking past Johnny. "Please, don't make this mistake. These people will find you, and when they do—" "Get out," Johnny said, taking another step forward. Her father's hand moved toward his jacket, and Johnny reacted instantly, grabbing the man's wrist in a grip that made him wince. "Don't," Johnny warned. For a moment, the two men stood locked in silent combat, neither willing to back down. Mia watched, her heart pounding, torn between the father she'd never known and the man who'd risked everything to protect her. "Dad," she said, the word feeling strange on her lips. "Please just go. I need time to think." The cabin fell silent after Mia's father left. Johnny secured the door, his movements precise but tense. The encounter had shaken them both, leaving unspoken questions hanging in the air between them. Mia sat on the couch, hugging her knees to her chest. She stared at the empty fireplace, her mind replaying her father's words over and over. Johnny moved around the kitchen, making tea, giving her space to process. When he finally approached, he carried 2 steaming mugs. He placed one on the coffee table in front of her and sat in the armchair across from the couch, keeping a respectful distance. "You okay?" he asked, his voice gentle. Mia shook her head. "I don't know what to feel. 30 years of nothing, and then he just shows up, acting like he has some right to tell me what to do." Johnny nodded, taking a sip from his mug. "Family's complicated." "Was yours?" Mia asked, suddenly curious about the parts of Johnny's life he rarely mentioned. A shadow crossed his face. "Yeah, my old man was a mean drunk. Left when I was 12. My mom worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table." "Is that why you joined the gang? The Hells Angels?" Johnny's eyes met hers, and for a moment, she saw vulnerability there, something rare in his usually guarded expression. "Partly," he admitted. "I was angry, looking for somewhere to belong. The Brotherhood gave me that, a family of sorts." He set his mug down. "But I made choices, bad ones. Can't blame my old man for those." Mia uncurled from her position, reaching for her tea. "What kind of choices?" Johnny was quiet for a long moment. "Violence, mostly. We ran protection rackets, dealt drugs sometimes. I hurt people who got in our way." His voice grew softer. "There was a night, a rival gang moved in on our territory. Things got out of hand. A store owner got caught in the crossfire." The pain in his voice was raw, unfiltered. Mia felt her chest tighten. "Did he die?" she asked. Johnny shook his head. "No, but he never walked again." He rubbed a hand across his face. "That was my wake-up call. I realized I'd become everything I hated about my father. Violent, destructive." "So you left?" "Not right away. Took time to extract myself. The Angels don't let members just walk away." He looked down at his hands. "I spent 5 years in prison for assault. When I got out, I cut all ties, moved here, started over." Mia absorbed this, studying the man before her, the hard lines of his face, the tattoos peeking from beneath his shirt sleeves, the scars that told stories of a violent past. Yet there was gentleness in him too, in the way he'd cared for her, protected her. "Do you ever see them? The Angels?" she asked. "Some. Not by choice." He met her gaze. "I'm not proud of who I was, Mia. I've spent 15 years trying to become someone different, someone better." "Is that why you helped me?" she asked softly. "Redemption?" Johnny considered this. "Maybe at first, but now." He trailed off, looking uncomfortable with the vulnerability. "Now what?" Mia pressed. "Now I help you because I care what happens to you." The words came out gruff but sincere. Silence fell between them, comfortable this time. Mia sipped her tea, thinking about forgiveness, about her father, about Johnny, about herself. "I think I understand," she finally said, "why you left that life. It takes courage to change." Johnny looked up, surprise flickering across his features. "Most people just see the tattoos, the scars. They assume I'm still that person." Mia shook her head. "I've seen who you really are, Johnny, these past weeks. You've had every chance to walk away, to leave me to face this alone. But you stayed. You protected me." Something shifted in Johnny's eyes, a lightening, as if a burden was being lifted. "We've all got pasts," Mia continued, "things we regret, but it's what we do with those regrets that matters, isn't it?" Johnny nodded, a small smile touching the corner of his mouth. "When did you get so wise?" Mia returned the smile. "I had a good teacher." In that moment, looking at Johnny across the small space between them, Mia realized something had changed. The man she'd once feared, whose past had made her wary, now represented something different to her. If Johnny, with all his mistakes and regrets, could find a path to redemption, perhaps there was hope for everyone. For her father. For herself. She reached across the coffee table and placed her hand over his. "Thank you," she said simply. "For everything." The morning sun slanted through the cabin windows, painting warm rectangles across the wooden floor. Johnny stood by the window, a mug of coffee cooling in his hand as he scanned the tree line with narrowed eyes. Something felt wrong. The birds had gone quiet. Mia emerged from the bathroom, her damp hair twisted into a towel. She noticed Johnny's rigid posture immediately. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Johnny set his mug down without turning. "Not sure yet. Just got that feeling." The phone in his pocket buzzed. Johnny pulled it out, checking the screen with a frown before answering. "Yeah?" Mia watched as his expression darkened. His knuckles whitened around the phone. "How long?" he asked, his voice tense. "You sure about that?" A pause. "Thanks for the heads up. I owe you one." He ended the call and turned to Mia, his eyes grave. "That was Mouse. Old friend from the Angels. Says there's word on the street that the cartel's put a price on both our heads now." Mia's stomach dropped. "Both of us? Why you?" "Because I'm helping you." Johnny moved quickly to the window, pulling back the curtain just enough to peek outside. "And because your father told them where to find us." "He wouldn't," Mia started, then stopped herself. After their last encounter, she couldn't be sure what her father would do. "Mouse says they're moving in. Today. We've got maybe an hour, if we're lucky." The reality of their situation hit Mia like a physical blow. This cabin had become a sanctuary over the past weeks, the only place she'd felt safe since witnessing the cartel exchange. Now even that was being taken away. "What do we do?" she asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. Johnny was already moving, pulling a duffel bag from under his bed. "We pack what we need and we go. Nothing we can't replace." "Where will we go?" "I've got a friend up north. Cabin deeper in the mountains, off-grid. We'll be safe there for a while." Mia hurried to gather her few possessions, her camera, the clothes Johnny had bought her, a small notebook where she'd been recording their journey. She paused at the drawer where she'd found the letter weeks ago. The letter that had first revealed Johnny's past to her, how far they'd come since then. Johnny moved efficiently around the cabin, grabbing essentials and shoving them into his bag. He pulled a loose floorboard up beneath his bed, retrieving a metal box. Mia glimpsed cash and a handgun before he tucked them into his jacket. "Almost ready?" he asked, zipping his bag closed. Mia nodded, then froze as the distant sound of engines reached her ears. Johnny heard it too, his head snapping toward the window. "They're early," he muttered. "Out the back, now." He grabbed both their bags in one hand, taking Mia's arm with the other. They slipped through the back door just as the first vehicle came into view, at the front of the cabin. They moved swiftly through the trees, Johnny leading them along a narrow path, barely visible among the undergrowth. Mia's heart hammered in her chest as they crested a small rise, the cabin now hidden from view behind them. Johnny's motorcycle was parked in a small clearing, covered with a tarp. "You knew we might need to leave quickly," Mia realized, watching as he uncovered the bike. "Always have an exit strategy." Johnny secured their bags to the back of the motorcycle. "Old habit." The sound of shouting carried through the trees, the cartel men discovering the empty cabin. Johnny handed Maya a helmet. "We need to move," he said, swinging his leg over the bike. Mia hesitated, looking back toward the cabin, the only safe place she'd known in weeks. "Mia." Johnny's voice drew her attention back. His eyes were steady, certain. "I won't let anything happen to you. That's a promise." The conviction in his voice steadied her. Mia pulled the helmet on and climbed onto the bike behind Johnny, wrapping her arms around his waist. "Hold on tight," he said, starting the engine. As they sped away through the trees, leaving behind their sanctuary, Mia pressed her face against Johnny's back and held on for dear life, clinging to the only safety she had left, the promise of a man who'd once been her enemy and was now her protector. The abandoned warehouse loomed against the darkening sky, its broken windows like hollow eyes watching Johnny and Mia as they approached. They had been driving for hours, taking back roads and forest paths to shake any followers. When the motorcycle had finally run low on fuel, this derelict building on the outskirts of a small industrial town seemed their only option for shelter. "Just for tonight," Johnny promised as he helped Mia off the bike. Her legs were stiff from the long ride, and she stumbled slightly. Johnny caught her elbow, steadying her. "We'll get supplies in the morning and keep moving." Mia nodded, too exhausted to argue. The weight of being hunted had settled into her bones, making even the simplest movements feel like a struggle. They made their way inside, Johnny leading with a small flashlight, checking corners and doorways with practiced caution. The interior was vast and empty, with high ceilings and concrete floors. Their footsteps echoed in the silence. "Over here," Johnny gestured toward a small office area in the back. "More defensible. Only one way in." Mia followed him into the dusty room. Johnny arranged their meager supplies, while Mia sank down against a wall, pulling her jacket tighter around herself. "Try to get some rest," Johnny said, his voice gentle. "I'll keep watch." Mia closed her eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. But sleep. Every creak and groan of the old building jerked her back to full alertness. Johnny sat by the door, his silhouette outlined against the dim moonlight filtering through a grimy window. Hours passed. The silence stretched between them, comfortable despite their circumstances. Then Johnny stiffened, his head turning sharply toward the main warehouse floor. "What is it?" Mia whispered. Johnny held up a hand for silence, then slowly rose to his feet. "Someone's here," he mouthed. Before they could move, the beam of a flashlight swept across the warehouse floor, then another. Voices murmured in Spanish. "How did they find us?" Mia's voice was barely audible. Johnny crouched beside her. "Back door," he whispered. "When I say run, you go. Don't look back." Mia's heart hammered against her ribs. She nodded, though everything in her wanted to refuse, to stay with him. Johnny reached into his jacket and withdrew the handgun she'd glimpsed earlier. The sight of it made the danger suddenly, terrifyingly real. A voice called out in Spanish, followed by the sound of footsteps approaching their hiding place. Johnny positioned himself by the office door, gun at the ready. The door burst open. Johnny moved with startling speed, disarming the first man through the door and using him as a shield. Gunshots rang out, deafeningly loud in the enclosed space. "Run!" Johnny shouted, shoving the man toward his companions. Mia bolted for the back door, her legs carrying her on instinct. Behind her, she heard grunts and the sounds of struggle. More gunshots. She reached the door and pushed through it into the cool night air, then hesitated. She couldn't leave him. From inside came the sound of glass breaking, then a man's cry of pain. Mia pressed herself against the outer wall, heart racing, torn between fleeing as instructed and going back for Johnny. The decision was made for her when Johnny burst through the door, grabbing her arm and pulling her into a run. "They're right behind us," he panted. They sprinted across the empty lot toward a line of trees. Gunfire erupted behind them, bullets kicking up dust at their heels. Johnny pushed Mia ahead of him, shielding her with his body as they ran. They reached the trees just as a car engine roared to life behind them. Johnny led them deeper into the woods, moving with surprising stealth despite their speed. After what felt like miles, when the sounds of pursuit had faded, Johnny finally slowed. Mia collapsed against a tree trunk, lungs burning, limbs shaking. Johnny crouched beside her, checking her for injuries. "Are you hurt?" Mia shook her head, unable to speak. Now that the immediate danger had passed, the reality of what had happened hit her. Men had tried to kill them. Johnny had fought them, possibly killed some of them, and he'd done it to protect her. "Hey," Johnny's voice was softer now. He took her trembling hands in his. "We're okay. We made it." Mia looked up at him, seeing a small cut above his eye and what would soon be a bruise forming on his cheek. You fought them, like you knew how." Johnny sighed. "Old skills. Not proud of them, but they kept us alive tonight." Mia's breath came in shuddering gasps. "I've never been shot at before." Johnny squeezed her hands. I know it's scary, but listen to me. We're still in control. They didn't win tonight. We did." "How can you say we're in control?" Mia asked, her voice breaking. "We're running for our lives." "Because we're still making choices," Johnny said firmly. "We choose where to go, how to move. We're not trapped, Mia. As long as we keep moving, keep thinking, we stay free." The abandoned warehouse had been a close call. Too close. Johnny and Mia had spent the night huddled in a small cave in the woods, alert to every sound. When dawn broke, Johnny had made contact with one of his few remaining trusted connections, securing them temporary shelter and, more importantly, information. Now, 3 days later, they stood across the street from a nondescript bar on the outskirts of town. "El Cuervo," read the weathered sign above the door. "The Raven." "This is it?" Mia asked, studying the building. Johnny nodded, his jaw set in a hard line. "Emilio's place. He runs everything from here, has for 15 years. "Your old rival," Mia said softly, remembering what Johnny had told her the night before. "More than that?" Johnny replied, his voice low and rough. "Emilio and I came up together. We were brothers once." Mia reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "You don't have to do this." Johnny's eyes, when they met hers, were filled with a quiet resolve. "Yes, I do. For both of us. It ends today." They crossed the street together, Johnny's hand protectively at the small of Maya's back. The bar was quiet this early in the day, only a few patrons nursing drinks in dark corners. A bartender glanced up as they entered, his eyes narrowing slightly before he returned to wiping glasses. Johnny guided Mia to a booth in the corner, positioning himself with a clear view of both the front and back entrances. A waitress approached, her expression wary. "Beer," Johnny said, "and water for the lady." The waitress nodded and moved away. Johnny scanned the room again, his body tense but controlled. "How do you know he'll come?" Mia whispered. "He'll come," Johnny said with certainty. "I made sure he knows I'm here." Their drinks arrived, and they sat in silence, waiting. Minutes stretched into an hour. Mia sipped her water, trying to ignore the knot of anxiety in her stomach. Johnny barely touched his beer, his eyes constantly moving, watchful. Then the back door opened, and a man stepped through. He was tall and lean, with salt and pepper hair and a thin scar running from his left temple to his jaw. He wore an expensive suit that somehow looked out of place in the dingy bar, yet he moved through the space with the ease of someone completely at home. Johnny straightened, but didn't rise. The man spotted them immediately, a slow smile spreading across his face. He crossed to their booth unhurried, stopping a few feet away. "Johnny," he said, his voice carrying a hint of an accent. "It's been a long time, brother." "Emilio," Johnny acknowledged, with a slight nod. "This is between you and me. Leave the girl out of it." Emilio's gaze shifted to Mia, studying her with undisguised interest. "So this is the photographer who's caused so much trouble?" He smiled, all teeth and no warmth. "Your father has been very concerned, señorita." Mia stiffened, but held his gaze steadily. "I want nothing to do with him." "Family is family," Emilio shrugged, "but that is not my concern." He turned back to Johnny. "You know why I'm here." "I'm done running," Johnny said quietly. "And I'm done with that life." Emilio laughed, a sound like broken glass. "No one leaves, Johnny, you know that. Especially not with unfinished business." His hand moved slightly, revealing the outline of a gun beneath his jacket. Johnny's expression didn't change, but Mia felt him tense beside her. "Your men tried to kill us at the warehouse," Johnny said flatly. "A misunderstanding," Emilio replied smoothly. "I wanted you brought to me, not harmed." He paused. "Not yet, anyway." The air between them crackled with tension. Johnny slowly stood, his movements deliberate. "Let's talk somewhere private." Emilio considered this, then nodded. "My office, in the back." He glanced at Mia. "The lady stays here." "No," Johnny said firmly. "She comes with me. I don't trust your men." Emilio's smile tightened, but he inclined his head in agreement. "As you wish." They followed him through the bar to a door at the back, passing through a short hallway into a surprisingly well-appointed office. Two men stood guard outside, eyeing Johnny suspiciously as they passed. Once inside, Emilio closed the door and moved behind a large desk. Johnny positioned himself between Mia and the door, his stance casual, but ready. "So," Emilio said, sitting down, "after all these years you walk right into my place. You must be desperate." "It ends today," Johnny repeated. "All of it." Emilio leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled beneath his chin. "You know, Johnny, I've always admired your courage, foolish as it sometimes is." His gaze shifted to Mia. "And you, señorita, you have your mother's eyes." The words struck Mia like a physical blow. She stepped forward, ignoring Johnny's protective gesture. "You know my mother?" A new voice spoke from the doorway behind them. "Of course he does. We all do." Johnny turned sharply, positioning himself between Mia and the newcomer. A man stood in the doorway. Tall, with silver-streaked dark hair and eyes exactly like Mia's. The resemblance was unmistakable. "Dad," Mia whispered, the word strange on her tongue. The man stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. He wore an expensive suit, his bearing confident and commanding. His eyes swept over Mia with cool assessment. "Amelia," he said, his voice devoid of warmth, "you look well." Mia stood frozen, her heart hammering against her ribs. For years she'd imagined this moment, meeting the father who had abandoned her and her mother. In her fantasies, there had been tears, explanations, perhaps even reconciliation. The reality was a stranger regarding her with detached curiosity. 15 years, she said finally, her voice stronger than she felt. 15 years, and that's all you have to say to me? Her father's expression didn't change. What would you have me say? That I'm proud of you for meddling in business that could get you killed? For aligning yourself with a man from our rival organization? I didn't know about any of this, Mia said, gesturing around them. I was taking pictures for a story. I had no idea what I was walking into. And yet, here you are, her father replied coldly. Digging into a world you know nothing about, endangering not only yourself but our entire operation. Your operation, Mia corrected. Not mine. I never wanted any part of this. Then you should have stayed away. The finality in his voice cut through her like a knife. Mia took a deep breath, fighting back tears. I want to know why, she said. Why did you leave? Why did you never contact me? Mom died waiting for you to come back. For the first time, something flickered across her father's face, a brief shadow of emotion quickly suppressed. Your mother understood the life I lead. She chose to leave. She loved you, Mia's voice broke. She waited for you to come back to us. Even when she was dying, she believed you would return. Then she was a fool, he said flatly. This world doesn't allow for happy families and normal lives. I gave you both what protection I could, from a distance. Protection? Mia laughed bitterly. Is that what you call abandoning your family? We struggled, we suffered. And you were what? Too busy with your criminal empire to care? Her father's eyes hardened. You know nothing about the choices I've made or why I made them. Then tell me, Mia demanded. Help me understand how a father walks away from his child and never looks back. For a long moment, the room was silent. Johnny stood watchful, his body tense, ready to move at the slightest threat. Emilio observed them all with calculating interest. I never wanted children, her father said finally. Your mother knew that. When she told me she was pregnant, I made my position clear. She chose to have you anyway. The words hit Mia like a slap. So I was a mistake, an inconvenience. You were a complication in a life that doesn't allow for complications. He glanced at Johnny, as I'm sure your protector understands. Johnny's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, letting Mia fight her own battle. Mia felt something break inside her, but it wasn't her heart. It was the last fragile thread of hope she'd been clinging to. I spent my whole life wondering about you, she said quietly. Making up stories about why you left, imagining the day you'd come back. What a waste. Her father's expression didn't change. If you're finished with this melodrama, we have more pressing matters to discuss. Your presence has created problems that need to be resolved. Mia shook her head, a strange calm washing over her. No, I'm done. I don't need your approval or your explanations anymore. I came looking for my father, but he doesn't exist. You're just a man who shares my DNA. She turned away from him, finding Johnny's steady gaze. His eyes held understanding and a warmth her father's had never contained. In that moment, Mia knew with absolute certainty that she'd found something more valuable than the father she'd been searching for. She'd found someone who chose to stay. The drive back to Johnny's cabin was silent. Mia stared out the passenger window, watching the landscape blur past, her mind replaying her father's cold dismissal over and over. Johnny kept his eyes on the road, occasionally glancing at her with concern, but respecting her need for quiet. When they finally pulled up to the cabin, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Mia stepped out of the truck, her body feeling heavier than it had ever been. The weight of 15 years of hoping, wondering, and dreaming crashed down on her shoulders. Inside, Johnny busied himself making coffee while Mia sank onto the worn leather couch. The cabin that had once felt like a temporary shelter now seemed like the only safe place in a world that had completely upended. "Here," Johnny said, offering her a steaming mug. His voice was gentle, a stark contrast to her father's cold tone. "Thanks." She wrapped her fingers around the warm ceramic, letting the heat seep into her skin. "What happens now, Johnny?" He settled into the armchair across from her. "What do you want to happen?" Mia laughed, without humor. "I don't know. For years, finding my father was the goal. I built my whole life around this fantasy of who he might be." She took a sip of coffee, wincing at the bitterness. "Now that I know the truth, I feel empty, like I've been chasing a ghost." Johnny nodded slowly. "Finding out the truth isn't always the relief we hope for." "He didn't want me," Mia said, her voice small. "He never did. That's on him, not you." Johnny's voice was firm. "Some people aren't capable of being what others need them to be." "Is that why you left your old life behind?" Mia asked, looking up at him. "Because you wanted to be something different?" Johnny was quiet for a long moment. "I left because I realized I was becoming someone I hated." She thought about her journey, from the frightened woman who had accidentally witnessed a cartel exchange to the person standing here now. "You know what the strangest part is?" she said finally. "Meeting my father should have destroyed me. Finding out he never wanted me, that I was just a complication in his life." She shook her head. "But I don't feel destroyed. I feel free." Johnny came to stand beside her, his presence solid and reassuring. "Free how?" "Free from waiting. Free from wondering." Mia turned to face him. "My whole life, I've been holding on to this anger, this hurt, keeping it alive because it was all I had of him. But I don't need that anymore." "What do you need?" Johnny asked softly. Mia took a deep breath. "I need to forgive him. Not for his sake. He doesn't deserve that. But for mine. I can't keep carrying this weight." Johnny nodded, understanding in his eyes. "That takes courage." "I learned from the best," she said, reaching for his hand. "A wise, grumpy biker once showed me that our past doesn't have to define our future." As Johnny's fingers closed around hers, Mia felt something shift inside her, a letting go of old pain, making room for whatever came next. Morning light filtered through the cabin windows, casting warm patches across the wooden floor. Johnny stood by the kitchen counter, 2 steaming mugs of coffee in front of him, watching as Mia sorted through her photographs spread across the dining table. "This one captures the mountains perfectly," Mia said, holding up a photo of sunrise over distant peaks. "The light just breaks through exactly right." Johnny brought the coffee over and set a mug beside her. "You've got a real talent." "Thanks." She smiled up at him, the shadows that had haunted her eyes for weeks finally beginning to fade. "I was thinking about what you said last night, about deciding what I want now." Johnny pulled out a chair and sat beside her. "And I want to take pictures, real ones, not just surveillance for news stories. Her fingers traced the edge of a photograph. I want to show people beauty they might miss otherwise. Johnny nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. You'd be good at that. What about you? Mia asked, setting down her coffee. What does Johnny want now that we're not running for our lives? He was quiet for a moment, his weathered face thoughtful. Never really had the luxury of thinking about it before. He ran a hand over his beard. All these years, I've been living day to day, just trying to stay away from trouble. And now? Mia prompted gently. Johnny's eyes met hers. Now I'm thinking maybe it's time to build something instead of just running from things. Build what? A life. He said it simply, but Mia could see the weight behind the words. Maybe fix up motorcycles for a living. I'm good with my hands, and it's honest work. In this town? Mia asked. Johnny shrugged. Could be. It's quiet here. Nobody knows me or my past. He took a sip of his coffee. What about you? Where does a photographer like you need to be? Mia gathered her photos into a neat pile. Everywhere eventually. But I've been thinking about starting in Colorado. The mountains there have always called to me. A flicker of something, disappointment maybe, crossed Johnny's face, but he nodded. Colorado's beautiful country. It is, Mia agreed. She reached across the table and took his hand. But I was thinking it might be nice to have a home base somewhere quiet, where I could develop my photos and plan my next trips. Understanding dawned in Johnny's eyes. Somewhere like here? Maybe. She smiled. If there's a good motorcycle mechanic in town who wouldn't mind me disappearing on photography trips now and then. Johnny's expression softened, the hard lines of his face relaxing. Think I might know a guy. He squeezed her hand. You sure about this, Mia? After everything that's happened, you deserve a fresh start. Clean slate. That's exactly what I'm getting, she said firmly. My whole life has been defined by what I was missing, by looking for someone who didn't want to be found. For the first time, I'm choosing what I want, not what I think I should want. Johnny nodded, understanding in his eyes. So, Colorado first? Yes. Mia's face lit up with excitement. There's a photography workshop in Aspen next month. I've already applied, and they accepted me yesterday. That's great, Johnny said, genuine pride in his voice. When do you leave? 2 weeks. She bit her lip. Is that okay? I know we're still figuring things out. Johnny chuckled. Mia, after what we've been through, I think we can handle a little distance. Relief washed over her face. I was thinking I could use my time there to start building a portfolio, maybe even look into gallery shows. I think that's exactly what you should do. Johnny stood and walked to the window, looking out at the forest surrounding the cabin. And when you come back, I'll have the cabin fixed up proper. Maybe even start on that workshop out back. Mia joined him at the window, leaning against his side. From running for our lives to planning renovations, who would have thought? Johnny put his arm around her shoulders. Life's full of surprises. The good kind, for a change, Mia said softly. Outside, a deer emerged from the tree line, cautiously stepping into the clearing. They watched it in comfortable silence, two people who had found something neither expected, a future worth building, together. Johnny stood on the back porch of the cabin, a cup of coffee warming his hands against the cool morning air. He watched as golden sunlight spilled through the pine trees, casting long shadows across the cleared space where his workshop would soon stand. The lumber was already stacked nearby, and the foundation had been poured last week while Mia was away at her photography workshop in Colorado. "You're up early," Mia said, stepping outside to join him. She wore one of his flannel shirts over her pajamas, her hair still tousled from sleep. Johnny smiled at the sight of her. "Old habits. Never did sleep past sunrise, even when I had the chance." She leaned against his side, and he wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "How long until your first customer?" she asked. "Got a Harley coming in tomorrow. Old Softail that needs some love." Pride flickered in his eyes. Word gets around quick in a small town when someone knows how to fix bikes. Mia nodded, taking a sip from his coffee cup. 3 bikes already this month. You're building quite the reputation." "Honest work," Johnny said simply. The phrase had become something of a mantra for him, a reminder of how far he'd come from his days with the gang. They stood in comfortable silence, watching as a pair of cardinals flitted between the trees at the edge of their property. These quiet moments still felt like a gift to Johnny, something he'd never thought he'd have again after the life he'd led. "I sorted through my Colorado photos last night," Mia said after a while. "I think I've got enough for a small portfolio. The gallery owner in town seemed interested when I stopped by yesterday." Johnny looked down at her, his weathered face softening. "You showed her your work?" "Just a few prints. She wants to see more." A blush crept into Mia's cheeks. "Said my mountain landscapes had remarkable depth." "They do," Johnny agreed. He'd watched her develop her photos in the makeshift darkroom they'd set up in the spare bathroom, amazed at how she captured light and shadow. "Always knew you had something special." Mia's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, reading the message with a small smile. "That's Lisa from the gallery. She wants to meet tomorrow afternoon." "You nervous?" Johnny asked. "A little." She tucked the phone away. "It's strange, putting my work out there for people to judge. Makes me feel exposed." Johnny understood that feeling all too well. "Worth it, though. Your photos tell stories people need to see." They finished the coffee and went inside, where Johnny pulled out blueprints for his workshop. Mia leaned over his shoulder as he explained his plans, her chin resting comfortably against him. "The far wall will have all my tools," he said, pointing. "Thinking of putting in skylights, too, for the natural light." "It's going to be perfect," Mia said. "Will you teach me how to change my own oil at least?" Johnny chuckled. "Figure that's the least I can do." Later that afternoon, they drove into town in Johnny's pickup truck. The small mountain community had accepted them without question. Just another couple looking for peace and quiet. No one knew about Johnny's past with the Hells Angels or Mia's dangerous brush with the cartel. Here, they were simply Johnny the motorcycle mechanic and Mia the photographer. They parked outside the hardware store, where Johnny needed supplies for the workshop. As they walked down Main Street afterward, Mia slipped her hand into his. Johnny still marveled at how natural it felt, this simple human connection that had once seemed impossible for a man like him. "I was thinking," Mia said as they passed the small real estate office, its window filled with listings. "Maybe we should make it official." Johnny raised an eyebrow. "The cabin?" She nodded. "We've been renting, but I think it could be home. For real." Johnny stopped walking, turning to face her. The idea of putting down permanent roots both terrified and thrilled him. For decades, he'd lived ready to leave at a moment's notice, never allowing himself to belong anywhere. "You sure?" he asked, his voice low. "That's a big step." "I'm sure," Mia said firmly. She squeezed his hand. "I want to build something that lasts. With you." Johnny looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the truth of it in her eyes. The woman who had once been a stranger he'd rescued had become the center of his world. She'd seen the worst of him and stayed anyway. "Then let's do it," he said simply. Let's make it home. 3 months later, Johnny stood in front of 12 teenagers at the community center, their eyes fixed on the motorcycle engine parts spread across the workbench. This right here, Johnny said, holding up a cylinder, is where the magic happens, the combustion chamber. He passed it to a lanky boy in a worn hoodie who examined it with careful fingers. Can we really build a working engine? Asked a girl with bright blue hair. By the end of this program, yeah. Johnny nodded. Not just build it, understand it. The Second Chances program had been his idea, pitched to the town council after he noticed how many local kids were drifting without direction. The same path he'd taken decades ago. Sometimes you need someone to show you a different way. The honesty seemed to resonate. The kids nodded, and the tension broke. By the end of the session, they were laughing as they struggled to reassemble a carburetor. Across town, Mia adjusted the lighting in her gallery space. The converted storefront showcased her photography, landscapes from their mountain home, but also portraits capturing the spirit of their new community. Her exhibition opening was tomorrow night, and nervous energy fluttered in her stomach. These are remarkable, said Lisa, the gallery owner, stopping to admire a black-and-white photograph of an elderly farmer's weathered hands. You have a gift for finding beauty in ordinary moments. Mia smiled. I think I've always seen the world that way. Just took me a while to trust my perspective. Her phone buzzed with a text from Johnny. Kids all gone, heading home, proud of you. Simple words that warmed her from within. She texted back a heart and returned to adjusting the final photograph, a stunning sunrise over the valley taken from their cabin porch. Later that evening, Johnny and Mia sat on their back deck, watching fireflies appear in the gathering dusk. A peaceful end to a fulfilling day. How were the kids today? Mia asked, her feet resting in Johnny's lap as he gently massaged them. Good. They're starting to trust me. He smiled. Alex wants to restore an old dirt bike. Told him I'd help if his grades improve. Mia nodded. You're changing lives, you know. Johnny shook his head, uncomfortable with the praise. Just showing them some skills, that's all. It's more than that, Mia insisted. She leaned forward to touch his arm. You're showing them there's always another path. That matters. Johnny was quiet for a moment. Never thought I'd be here, he finally said. Teaching kids, living in a house we own, watching my woman's art hang in a real gallery. His voice grew husky. Never thought I deserved any of it. Mia moved to sit beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. That's what second chances are about. We both found ours. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the night sounds around them. The cabin lights cast a warm glow through the windows, illuminating the home they'd created together. Not just the structure, but the life within it. Gallery opening tomorrow, Mia said softly. Nervous? Johnny chuckled. I'm just the arm candy. You're the star. She laughed, the sound carrying across their property. You clean up nice in that suit I bought you. Only for you, he promised, pulling her closer. The mountain air grew cooler as stars appeared overhead. Johnny reached for the blanket they kept on the deck and wrapped it around them both. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and triumphs, but tonight they had this moment. Peaceful, hard-earned, and filled with quiet hope. Johnny stood before the group of teens gathered in the community center garage. Tools were neatly arranged on a pegboard behind him, and the smell of motor oil lingered in the air. This wasn't where he'd imagined his life would lead, but now he couldn't picture being anywhere else. Today we're going to rebuild this carburetor, Johnny said, holding up the part. It might look complicated, but once you understand how each piece works together, It makes perfect sense. A boy with a faded blue hoodie raised his hand. Like life, Mr. Johnny. The unexpected wisdom from 15-year-old Marcus made Johnny pause. The kid had been in and out of foster homes, always on the edge of serious trouble. Johnny saw himself in the boy's wary eyes. Yeah, Marcus. Exactly like that, Johnny replied, feeling something warm spread through his chest. Pride, maybe. Or purpose. The teens gathered around the workbench, their faces intent as Johnny demonstrated how to disassemble the carburetor. He moved among them, offering guidance with a patient hand when they struggled, praising their successes with genuine warmth. Easy does it, Tanya, he said, steadying a girl's hand as she removed a delicate float needle. You got it. That's the way. Her face lit up with accomplishment as the part came free. For many of these kids, success was a foreign country they rarely visited. Johnny was determined to change that. As the session progressed, Johnny watched them work together, helping each other without prompting. These weren't the lost causes society had labeled them. They were just kids who needed someone to believe in them, someone who understood what it felt like to walk a dangerous edge. Mr. Johnny, said Ellie, a quiet girl who rarely spoke. My mom says you used to be in a gang. That true? The room went silent. Johnny could feel all eyes on him. Yes, he said simply. I made a lot of mistakes when I was younger. Did things I'm not proud of. What changed you? Asked Marcus, setting down his wrench. Johnny thought about Mia, about redemption, about second chances. I realized I wanted something different, and someone gave me a chance to prove I could be better than my past. The honesty seemed to resonate with the teens. No platitudes or preaching, just the truth from someone who'd walked through fire and survived. That's why I believe in all of you, Johnny continued, because I know what it's like to have people expect the worst, and I know what it's like to finally expect better from yourself. After the session ended, Johnny stayed behind, wiping down tools and sweeping the floor. This simple routine brought him peace. Each tool returned to its proper place represented order reclaimed from chaos, a feeling he cherished after decades of turmoil. The community center director poked her head in the door. Johnny, the board approved funding for next year's program. They were impressed with the attendance numbers and the feedback from parents. Johnny nodded, satisfaction warming his chest. Thanks for letting me know. No, thank you, she said sincerely. You're changing lives here. After she left, Johnny stood alone in the quiet garage. He ran his hand along the workbench, thinking about the journey that had brought him here, from outlaw to mentor, from feared to respected. The transformation still amazed him. Later that evening, Johnny returned home to find Mia on their porch swing, camera in her lap, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple. She looked up as his boots sounded on the wooden steps and smiled. That same smile that had first cracked open his hardened heart. How was class? She asked, as he settled beside her on the swing. Good. The kids are making real progress. Johnny took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. The program got renewed for next year. Of course it did, Mia said, leaning against him. You're exactly what those kids need. They sat together in comfortable silence as darkness gathered around their mountain home. Crickets began their nightly symphony, and the first stars appeared in the deepening blue sky. Did you ever think we'd end up here? Mia asked softly. Johnny looked at their entwined fingers, his scarred and weathered, hers slender and strong. Never in my wildest dreams. Me neither, she whispered, but now I can't imagine any other life. The porch swing creaked gently as they rocked. Two souls who had found in each other exactly what they needed most: redemption, understanding, and the freedom to become their best selves. I hope you like this story. Please share what's your favorite part of the story and where in the world you are watching from. Have a wonderful day.